Hello, this is how to install the operating system FreeBSD 15.1 Beta 1 with KDE Plasma desktop in a QEMU virtual machine. This is the announcement email. In here we have the ISO images. I have sorted the images descending by size. I want the bigger one for AMD 64. The ISO file has finished downloading. Let's check the checksum. In the email, there's a list of checksums. We have downloaded AMD 64 DVD1.iso. SHA-512 starts with FBCAA and ends with 0DC. So the checksum is correct. Let's create a virtual machine. We're going to use Virt Manager, File, New Virtual Machine, ISO, Browse, FreeBSD. What should we write here? Arch Linux. Forward, 10 GB of random access memory, 14 vCPUs, 200 GB NVMe, FreeBSD 15.1, customize, finish, and let's be brave. UEFI, 14 vCPUs, VirtIO disk, SATA CD-ROM, network interface card, VirtIO, and USB tablet. This should be it. Begin installation. The ISO doesn't yet support UEFI secure boot, so we should enter the UEFI configuration screen, pressing enter. EFI firmware setup, device manager, secure boot configuration, attempt secure boot no, so press the space bar, and then F10 to save, Y, escape a number of times, 2 times, and continue, reset. Let's make sure the ISO is still there. It's not. Let's put it back. So we have the ISO file back in the SATA CD-ROM drive. We should be able to just reboot. Force reboot. Force reset. Okay, so FreeBSD has booted in UEFI mode. This is the bootloader. And we're greeted with a text user interface that allows us to install. Says, would you like to install? Yes. Key map selection. Defaults to US. Continue with default key map. Yes. Please choose a host name. FreeBSD 15.1. Would you like to install the base system using traditional sets or packages? I have never used packages before, but since it's the default option, we'll keep it. So packages tech preview, press enter. Would you like to fetch packages from the internet or use the limited set of packages included in the installation media? The installation media is extremely large, 5 gigabytes, but still the default is network, so let's go with network. Network interface card vert IO. Configuration mode auto, which means DHCP client. I have never used ZFS before, so I'll go with UFS. Entire disk. The default should be GPT, and it is. The partition table /boot/EF5 for EF5 variables /FreeBSD UFS and a swap. Sounds okay. The size is 4 gigabytes for the swap. Finish. Commit. And then the selection similar to the sets. So base, debug, devel, kernel, lib32. Includes devel and optional. Yeah, I'll keep the defaults. How do we do that? And here we can see the packages instead of sets. So FreeBSD with the capitalization, minus, and then the name of the package. I recognize many of the package names in here from Linux operating systems. And curse is libarchive, xz, PAM, zstandard, cshell, clang, bzip2, Bluetooth. The download was pretty fast. It's now installing each of these packages. And asks for the user root password. Okay. Select region, probably for time zone and not only. America. United States. Easternmost areas. EDT. Skip. Skip. I want the SSH server. Yeah, the default options sound okay. Security hardening options. The default selection seems okay. Would you like to add users? Yes. Administrator. UID default. User group administrator. Invite to other groups. I don't actually remember. Maybe will is a good idea. Login class default. sh/home/administrator. Password-based authentication. Empty password, no. Random, no. Lock out the account. Okay. I didn't find the options to install the KDE Plasma desktop straight inside the FreeBSD 15.1 installer. Maybe it was somewhere, but I didn't actually find it. We're going to exit the installer. Nothing else I can do from this menu. The installation is finished. Would you like to open a shell? Probably not. Would you like to reboot? I'm going to actually shut down and make sure that there's no ISO in the CD-ROM drive. Let's remove it. And this should be it. We can now start the operating system. And since KDE Plasma was not installed during the installer of FreeBSD, I'm going to install KDE Plasma the way that I usually do it, the way that I did it in previous versions of FreeBSD. The default version of the FreeBSD handbook still talks about FreeBSD 15.0 release and December 31st. So probably my notes are still relevant. This is my wiki page, mariusp.github.io. Let's follow my steps. FreeBSD has finished booting. It started in text mode. So this link, how to install other operating systems, I'm searching for FreeBSD. So I have installed FreeBSD, have created a user which I wanted to be a sudoer, named administrator. I have added the user to the group wheel. The SSH server is enabled, so we can connect to the virtual machine straight using an SSH connection and ignoring the virtualization software. I cannot actually copy paste text towards the virtual machine using the virtualization software, but I can copy paste text from a regular SSH connection. So we'll prefer to use SSH as much as possible. This is the IPv4 address. So SSH administrator. It asks if I want to trust this SSH server. Yes. Password. Okay, let's make sure that we can become the super user, the user root. The user root has a password, so we need to type that. And we can start installing packages. Apparently there's no need to bootstrap the pkg executable any longer, so this step. Probably pkg executable, command line installer, command line package installer, and package manager was used for installing the base sets. I'm going to install bash, the shell. It has downloaded the package metadata, similar to apt update. Let's see what it's installing. Bash, curl, compression, algorithm broadly, Emacs without graphical user interface, so just text user interface, and their dependencies. GNU multiple precision library, Minute Commander, the text user interface file manager, some Perl modules, yes. Next up, I'm going to change the shell of the user root to be bash, installed from binary packages. There's also a message from the package Midnight Commander that says about the sh shell, which I have selected to be the default for all users when I installed FreeBSD. But I'm going to use the bash shell, which makes it that MC will work correctly according to this note. We're going to use KDE Plasma and Xorg, not Wayland, for the graphical server. Let's install all of these. 170 packages, so the X server is split into a ton of very tiny packages. Then there's font technologies. LLVM probably for software rendering of 3D acceleration. Ton of fonts. We'll make sure that the user administrator, so this guy is part of the user group video. How do we copy paste? Ctrl-Shift-V. We want to install most of the Noto fonts to have a coverage for multiple languages. Proceed yes. So Asian fonts, etc. 65 binary packages to download and install. Let's look at these errors in here. Says that it downloaded but couldn't write to the disk. I'm not sure what that is. We have installed the binary package sudo. Now we need to make sure that all of the users that are members in the local user group wheel can use the sudo command to become super user. We need to locate the comment in the outline with wheel. Okay, in here, so there's options wheel without requiring the password of the current user or with requiring. So we're going to go with this line. Pretty basic default settings. When you want to elevate yourself as the user root, you go sudo and it will ask your password. Ctrl X S, Ctrl X C. Next up, we want procfs. So let's do that. Ctrl X S, Ctrl X C. You could have installed other text user interface editors such as Nano, which is maybe simpler than Emacs. And then we need to mount the procfs. Let's see if the name of the package, meta package, is still KDE. Let's see what it installs. X-Wayland. Libraries for audio video codecs. More fonts. Vulkan. A ton of Qt6 Python modules. KDE Plasma modules. So it looks okay, a ton of libraries. Yes. Almost 500 binary packages to download and install. Most of these are really, really small. Around 100 kilobytes in size. All of these additional steps that seem strange when you come from Linux, where just installing a KDE meta package or selecting KDE inside the Linux installer wizard will do everything for you, but in here we need to do additional steps for which you actually need to read the FreeBSD book. So you need to enable procfs. In my opinion, just installing a KDE package should enable automatically procfs if needed by that package. Then we need to manually enable the dbus, IPC inter-process communication mechanism. And then we also need this workaround. So all of these are workarounds, 1, 2, and 3. For now, we need to manually perform these steps, but again, these steps should be performed by just installing packages. If a package does require this, the package should enable them. There should be post-install hooks or something, scripts that do all of these changes for us. And then making sure that you comply with the messages from 100 binary packages. I'm not sure how humanly possible it is to actually read all of these messages and make sure whatever is documented here doesn't affect you, or you have implemented this, or you know the limitations. Okay, next up. So this was installing the KDE Plasma as the user root. Now I need to stop being the user root, so Ctrl D. Who am I? The user administrator. I'm going to change the shell of this user to make it bash, the default one. And then I need to see if sudo works. And it does. Let's look at the environment variable path. It's bin usr as bin usr bin usr local as bin. It looks okay. I'm not sure if the environment variable path will look okay when we log into KDE Plasma using the remote desktop protocol server xrdp, which is what I actually plan to do. So on my wiki page, the first link in here for remote desktop protocol, I have reasons to not use the virtualization software when logged into KDE Plasma. I actually want to be connected via the remote desktop protocol. I have the possibility of changing the resolution inside KDE Plasma easily. Copy paste of text will work out of the box. I have better performance for the GUI connection and for playing back videos and YouTube, etc. Okay, let's make sure that we have installed the KDE Plasma X11 session. So I have run the command package pkg search kwin. Kwin is the X11 window manager and Wayland compositor from the KDE community. And I can see that the X11 version is installed. So I'm going to guess that the KDE Plasma session that has been installed in here is the X11 one, even if the KDE Plasma Wayland session is also installed. At least the X11 session is installed. Next up, the instructions for FreeBSD. We're going to install the packages for xrdp and xorg xrdp. I'm not exactly sure why there's a split in two packages, xrdp and xorg xrdp. I always have installed them at the same time. Okay, so it wants to install ImageLib. Okay, instructions on how to enable the xrdp sesman, which I actually want to do, such that xrdp is running by default when I restart the computer. I'm not going to do audio redirection, so the audio that is played inside the virtual machine, for instance, inside a web browser, will get played back on the hardware machine. Service xrdp as all start. I'm not sure what this does. Okay, next up we'll need to have a configuration file. There's many possibilities. There's maybe this one, but then there's also one per the current user, which I'm going to use. We'll need to make sure that we have a web browser. We can connect inside KDE Plasma and install it then, or we can install it right now. So let's do that. I usually use the web browser Firefox. Theoretically, you could live without a web browser inside the FreeBSD virtual machine if you're only connecting using OpenSSH or the RDP protocol, because copy-paste of text works and you can use the web browser in your host operating system. Okay. So let's prepare this configuration file. Make sure you're not a user root. Let's test that all of these executables exist. Dbus launch exists. ck-launch session exists. Start Plasma X11 exists. So create a configuration file named ~start wm.sh for start window manager probably. Ctrl X as Ctrl X C. And then this file needs to be executable. I have already installed Firefox. I'm going to restart the computer and hopefully everything will just work. So I'll become the super user root, and let's see if shutdown -R now works correctly. Let's see how many seconds the bootloader waits. So there's a 10 seconds timeout for the user to select the correct option inside the boot menu. In my opinion, 10 seconds timeout is way too long. 2 seconds timeout is long, and 1 second is probably better. So 2 seconds would be the conservative value. Next up, we can already see that the xrdp sys1 services are started. Let's try to just connect using the remote desktop protocol. So at the web page for the remote desktop protocol, near the end, I have command line samples on how to connect. I am on Linux, Ubuntu 26.04. I have installed the remote desktop protocol client FreeRDP. So this is the executable for me. Let's actually edit a bit the command line. So let's see how it looks like. The executable name might be WL FreeRDP, X FreeRDP, X FreeRDP3, etc. Username, it is administrator. The initial resolution to start with and height, so that's 1080p resolution. The IPv4 address of the computer that we're connecting to ends with .55. Then we want the best speed, which is /network:/LAN. We want to be able to resize the FreeRDP window, and that will tell the KDE Plasma to change its resolution. And we want the best performance and features /video/RFX/GFX. I'm not going to forward the sound from the virtual machine towards the hardware machine. So this should be the command line. You should save it somewhere, maybe in a Google Doc, to always have it available. Okay, the command line is not that great. We need to present the domain. So the domain is probably dot and then 2 backslashes. Dot means the current computer. It asks for the password. Asks if I want to trust this RDP remote desktop protocol server. Yes. And KDE Plasma X11 sessions should start for the very first time for the current user, for the user administrator. And everything seems to work correctly. We could log in to the KDE Plasma X11 session with the correct user. The KDE Plasma session looks okay, behaves okay, is pretty fast, and the important features which are documented at the start of the page, which says that if I resize the remote desktop protocol client, make it, for instance, a quarter of 1080p, then that will tell KDE Plasma to change resolution. And this way there's no scaling, no stretching. All of the pixels look exactly correct on my monitor. Very important feature to have for me. And then copy paste of text should work. Let's see what applications are installed by default in here. At the minimum minimorum, we should have the KDE Plasma session with the system settings application and the terminal console. And from there on, I can install the rest of the things. I require some applications. I require the application Kate, which is a text editor. I want this application to be added to favorites such that when I start the KDE Plasma start menu, it's immediately visible to me. I want the Firefox web browser. This should be inside the internet menu. It's here. This I want it to be pinned to the task manager and also in the very first position. I don't use Conqueror, so I'm not going to have it pinned in the task manager or in the favorites in start menu. I don't use the Software Center Discover. I'm going to unpin it. It's already present in start menu favorites. I'm not actually sure it works on FreeBSD. So there I'm not exactly sure why it's installed by default if it doesn't support FreeBSD PKG packages. Or maybe it does. I don't need the system settings pinned to the task manager. I have them both Dolphin and system settings favorited in the start menu. I can see this issue in KDE Plasma where the user icon is wrong and the text is wrong, user ampersand. At the very top left of the KDE Plasma start menu. This issue has existed for the last 5 years in various versions of KDE Plasma and various versions of FreeBSD. Okay, let's prove that copy paste of text works. Copy from the host. Does work. Copy from the guest. Does work. Next up, I have skipped this step, so let's make sure that the environment variable path is set correctly. Again, we're in a very special environment. It's FreeBSD 15.1 plus the xrdp server, and inside there's the X11 server and then the KDE Plasma session, X11 session. Okay, as been USR as been. It looks great. So extremely impressed. FreeBSD was easy to install. KDE Plasma was installed correctly. The xrdp server works okay. I can connect using a remote desktop protocol client, and the good features of RDP work correctly for me. So resizing the FreeRDP client will change the KDE Plasma resolution. Copy paste of text works both directions, and then everything's extremely fast. I don't feel any speed difference between using FreeBSD via remote desktop protocol or using FreeBSD on a modern computer or laptop. Next up, what I usually do. Let's see what are my next steps in here. Let's change some settings. System settings. I want the mouse cursor to be way larger. 36. This probably requires that we reconnect the session. Let's see how that works. I want to log out and then log in. And now the mouse cursor is way bigger. I want to improve the font sub-pixel rendering. So that's font. And I want sub-pixel rendering RGB and full. I want this edge to not exist in KDE Plasma. So let's edit screen edges. Nothing. And then I want, when I do this, I always change the percentage towards 15. Yes, everything just works in miraculous way. And it has always worked correctly in the last versions of FreeBSD and KDE Plasma. Okay, I don't consume multimedia on my virtual machines. There's the host machine for that. Web browser. Yeah, I usually do development stuff, so I start the... I also need console pinned to the favorites. So add to favorites, this guy. And then I prefer the twin pane Orthodox File Manager Crusader. Package install Crusader. Yes. Let's start it. Let's configure it. Panel layout compact. View 12. And the viewer editor, I want the editor to be /usr/local/bin/git. And that should be it. And now I remove the pixels that are not that useful to me. Settings, toolbars shown, I'm going to hide all of them. I do want the main menu. No function keys. No status bar and embedded terminal. So it just looks great. I don't have anything extra to do, but we'll just test the entire system by doing something simple, which is start contributing for KDE from inside a FreeBSD virtual machine. So kde.org, the homepage of the KDE community, this hamburger menu, get involved, development, KDE builder. Let's set it up. Ctrl-Shift-V. It wants to install some packages, asks for the sudo password. PKG update is required. Let's actually do that first. Error updating repositories. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's related to the package kit backend. Maybe I should just restart the computer. I want to install these packages. So KDE-builder is a Python executable Python script, has some dependencies. We're installing them at these steps. Okay. Says that I have tilde/bin in my path environment variable, but I should also have tilde/.local/bin, which is correct. Hopefully in the near future, FreeBSD will add tilde/.local/bin to the path environment variable by default for all users. Let's see how we do that. ls-la. Let's see if there's a .profile file. There is. If there's a .bashrc file, there isn't. Let's see what tilde/.profile does. So it sets editor and pager environment variables. And then I'm not sure what it does. So we'll probably need a bashrc file, which I don't know how to create. Let's look at the shrc file. Yeah, so maybe it doesn't even require a shebang or anything. It's just lines of commands that need to be run. Okay, so Kate bashrc, and then how do we export? Just like this. So path is environment variable path. And where do we put tilde/.local/bin, at the start or at the end of the path environment variable? At the end for now. Control S. So by just starting a new tab inside console, which is the KDE default terminal emulator, the lines that exist in tilde/.bashrc should be executed. I don't like the fact that I don't see the main menu in console, so let's fix that from the hamburger menu of console. More, show menu bar with all actions, Ctrl-Shift-M. I don't really want to see a main toolbar. How do we remove everything? Okay, Ctrl-Shift-T, echo $path, and indeed tilde/.local/bin is available. Copy paste works if you actually use the clipboard, not if you use the primary selection. Catalog, I'm not sure if it's an English US word with a U. Okay, next up we're going to create the configuration file for KDE Builder. Ctrl-Shift-V. Let's look at the configuration file. I usually change this rel with debinfo with debug because I actually want to debug software, but not in this case. The rest of the settings are correct, are the default ones. And now we're going to install hopefully many packages using the command line package manager pkg. There should be, I know, 1000 packages to install. Sometimes I have really bad performance in Git operations on FreeBSD. I fixed this issue at some point, but I don't actually remember what the fix was. But yes, if you're going to use Git, you totally need to investigate that thing. You don't want to wait for minutes for nothing to actually happen. Okay, the packages that KDE Builder wants to install include Python 3.9 packages, which are not available in FreeBSD 15.1. In here, we probably have Python 3.11, but we'll see. Let's actually prove that. pkg search Python. So indeed Python 3.11. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not that FreeBSD binary packages for Python modules have the version of Python in the name. In our case, for KDE Builder, we need to update the list of binary packages to install each time the version of Python changes. Like it was that case in this case, so going from Py 39 to Py 311 minus, and then the rest of the name of the package. Maybe there's a meta package for Python Finder, which will then install Py 311 minus Python Finder. All of the packages have finished installing. The only one that couldn't be found is Py 39 minus GI docgen. Let's actually keep the name around. And now KDE Builder, the build framework that knows how to build KDE Git repositories in the correct order and with the correct configuration options, is installed, available, and we can start using it. Let's build a very simple KDE Git repository that only depends on two other Git repositories, sysadmin repo metadata and extra-simic modules. Again, we can see really slow Git fetch operations, which, if I remember correctly, are generated by RO, large receive offload, for maybe the network interface card, driver in FreeBSD for virt.io, which we'll probably need to disable if we want to do anything interesting related to programming inside this virtual machine. Building was successful, everything just worked again at this point. Let's see if Git operations are a bit better after I have run this magic command line minus x checksum and minus tx checksum and minus tso and minus LRO, which goes from this to this. I don't see any differences. So this is it. FreeBSD 15.1 Beta 1 has worked as well as previous versions of FreeBSD for me. The only things that didn't work that great were huge delays in doing Git commits, in Git operations in general, and the message that I get when I install packages saying that it cannot write to the disk, which probably can be fixed by just doing a reboot. So this is it. Everything just worked. Thank you.